You're higher than any human was ever meant to be. The air is so thin every breath only half fills your lungs. Sunlight blazes off the snow, but the second it drops behind that ridge, the cold will crash to something that should kill you in an hour. And somewhere under the white powder ahead is a crack in the ice deep enough to swallow you whole. This is the Alps, 5,000 years ago. And somehow people didn't just cross it. Some of them lived here. Today, the Alps are a postcard. You ride a cable car to the top with a hot chocolate in your hand. You drive straight through the mountain in a heated tunnel. You strap boards to your feet and slide down the exact slopes that used to be death sentences. For you, the Alps are a holiday. But for a human 5,000 years ago, walking into those mountains was like walking onto another planet, one that was actively trying to kill you in 3 different ways at once. And the fact that they did it on purpose with nothing but stone tools and animal skins is one of the most underrated survival stories in human history. So let's start with what actually makes a mountain like this so deadly. Because it's not just one thing, it's 3, and they all hit you at the same time. The first killer is the cold. High in the Alps, the temperature doesn't just drop, it collapses. The moment the sun goes behind a peak, you can lose dozens of degrees in minutes. Wind screams across the ice with nothing to slow it down. And a wet, unprepared human up there doesn't last the night. Hypothermia isn't a risk in these mountains. It's the default. The mountain's resting state is cold enough to kill you. And every hour you're up there, it's trying. The second killer is the air itself. As you climb, there's less and less oxygen in every breath. Go high enough and your body starts to struggle, just sitting still. Your head pounds. You get dizzy, clumsy, confused. Simple decisions become hard. And that's the real danger of thin air. It doesn't just tire you out, it makes you stupid at the exact moment you need to be sharp. A confused human on a narrow ledge is a dead human. Early people crossing high passes were doing it with their brains running on half power, and they still had to make perfect choices. And the third killer is the one you never see coming. The mountain is full of hidden traps. Under a smooth, innocent layer of snow, there can be a crevasse, a crack in a glacier hundreds of feet deep. One step, and you're gone. Whole slopes of snow can let go at once and bury you in an avalanche in seconds. A clear day can turn into a total whiteout where you can't see your own hands, and people just walk in circles until they freeze. The Alps don't fight fair. They hide the danger until you're already in it. So you've got cold that kills, air that confuses, and ground that lies to you. Everything about this place says a soft, hairless, tropical animal should not be here. And yet, we have proof that they were. Because in 1991, 2 hikers found a body melting out of the ice high in the Alps. They thought it was a lost modern climber. It wasn't. It was a man who died up there 5,300 years ago, frozen so perfectly that his skin, his organs, his last meal, and everything he was carrying survived into the present. We call him Otzi. And Otzi is the closest thing we will ever have to a field manual for how humans survived these mountains because he didn't just leave bones, he left his entire kit. So let's look at what it actually took. The first thing that kept him alive was his clothing, and it was far more advanced than most people imagine. Ötzi wasn't wearing one shaggy hide. He was wearing a system. Multiple layers of different animal skins, each doing a job. A coat of stitched hides, leggings tied to a belt, a loincloth, a bearskin cap with a leather strap under the chin, and a long cloak woven from mountain grass that could shed rain and snow. Even his shoes were engineering, waterproof bearskin soles, deer hide uppers, a woven net inside to hold everything together, and the whole thing stuffed with soft grass for insulation, like a built-in sock. This wasn't someone who threw on a fur and hoped. This was a person dressed by generations of hard-won knowledge about exactly what the mountain does to a body and exactly how to stop it. And clothing was only half of staying warm. The other half was fire. And up there, fire was everything. Ötzi carried a fire kit, and it's genuinely clever. He had pieces of a fungus called true tinder fungus, which catches a spark and smolders for a long time, letting you carry a fire with you instead of starting one from scratch in freezing wind, which is nearly impossible. He had flint. He had the raw materials to make heat wherever he stopped. In the mountains, the ability to reliably make and carry fire wasn't a convenience. It was the single thread your life hung from. But gear alone doesn't get you across a mountain. The second thing that kept these people alive was knowledge, and this is the part we tend to forget. They didn't wander into the Alps blindly. Over generations, mountain people built up an enormous invisible library of information about how to read the land, which passes were low enough to cross and which would kill you, what time of year the snow was stable enough to walk on, how to spot the subtle signs of a slope about to avalanche, how to follow the trails that wild animals like ibex and chamois had already worn into the safest routes because those animals had been solving the mountain for far longer than we had, where the rock overhangs were that you could shelter under when the weather turned. None of this is written down. All of it is the difference between living and dying, and it was passed from person to person, generation to generation, like the most important inheritance there was. Which raises the obvious question. If this place was so deadly, why go up at all? And the answer is that the mountains, as terrifying as they were also full of reasons to climb. There was food up there that lived nowhere else. Wild goats like the ibex, packed with meat and fat that you could hunt on the high slopes. Ötzi's own last meals included ibex and red deer, so we know he was eating what the mountain provided. There were materials worth the risk. Otzi was carrying an axe with a blade of almost pure copper, a valuable, worked metal, which tells us these high roots were part of trade, that people were moving precious things across the peaks. And, most importantly, the other side. The Alps sat between whole worlds of people, and the only way to connect them, to trade, to migrate, to find new territory, was through the mountains. So humans did something remarkable. They looked at the deadliest barrier in Europe and slowly, carefully turned it into a road. And that's where this gets bigger than just survival. Because to cross these mountains again and again, humans had to turn the Alps from an enemy into a known thing. They mapped it in their minds. They named the passes. They learned its moods and its seasons and its warning signs until a place that should have been impossible became, for the people who knew it, passable. That knowledge how to read a mountain was itself a kind of technology, as real as the copper axe or the fire kit. It just lived inside people's heads instead of in their hands. And Otzi is the proof of how good it got. A 45-year-old man dressed in a layered survival suit, carrying a copper axe and a portable fire, hunting high in the peaks, moving through terrain that kills unprepared people to this day. He didn't stumble up there and freeze. He belonged up there. He was the product of thousands of years of humans learning, the hard way, exactly how to stay alive in a place designed to end them. So think about the whole picture. For early humans, the Alps were a wall of three killers: cold that collapses in minutes, air that steals your oxygen and your judgment, and hidden traps under every step. And they beat all three. They beat the cold with layered clothing and a fire they could carry in their hands. They beat the thin air and the traps with a deep inherited knowledge of exactly how to read the mountain and when to move. And they beat the barrier itself by turning it into a route, crossing the deadliest place in Europe to reach the people and the resources on the other side. Today, you go through the mountain in a warm tunnel, or over it in a cable car, and you never once feel like it's trying to kill you. Ötzi went over it on foot, carrying his home on his back and his fire in a birch bark box, in a world where one bad decision meant you never came down. And here's the part that should stick with you. His gear was so good, his preparation so complete, that when the mountain finally did take him, it didn't erase him. It preserved him perfectly for 5,300 years, as if to prove just how ready he was. Your ancestors didn't survive the deadliest mountains on Earth by being tough. They survived by being prepared in ways we're only now starting to understand. And that might be the most human thing there is.